The Galactic Council chamber hummed with the familiar energy of 1,000 different species. Ambassador Sarah Chen adjusted her simple black uniform, feeling oddly underdressed among the elaborate robes, ceremonial armor, and bioluminescent displays of her fellow diplomats. The humans had been part of the council for barely 3 standard years, still considered newcomers in a body that had existed for millennia. The motion to restrict human expansion into the Outer Rim is now under consideration, announced High Chancellor Vextar, his crystalline voice echoing through the massive dome. The crystalline's body gleamed like a living diamond, refracting the chamber's light into prismatic patterns that hurt human eyes to look at directly. Sarah felt her jaw tighten. This was the 3rd motion in as many months designed to limit human activity. First, it had been restrictions on their military fleet sizes, then limitations on their trade routes. Now they wanted to box humanity into their current solar systems, claiming it was for galactic stability. The Zelhari representative, a being that looked like a cross between a mantis and a flower, clicked its mandibles in what Sarah had learned was their version of approval. The humans breed too quickly, it chittered through its translator. Their expansion rate threatens the careful balance we have maintained for centuries. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Sarah noticed how many species nodded, or made their equivalent gestures of support. The Bovac delegation, massive bull-like creatures covered in ceremonial scarring, stamped their hooves in unison. The ethereal lumina, beings of pure energy contained in gossamer forms, pulsed brighter. Furthermore, continued the Zelhari, their aggressive tendencies are well documented. They wage war upon their own species with alarming frequency. What happens when they turn this aggression outward? Sarah stood slowly, feeling the weight of every eye, sensor, and consciousness in the chamber focus on her. The human delegation was small compared to most others, just herself and 2 advisors. They didn't have the resources for massive diplomatic missions like the established powers. Honored council members, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. Humanity appreciates the council's concerns, but we must respectfully disagree with the characterization of our species. A low rumble came from the Corvin section, a species of bear-like creatures known for their philosophical nature. Respectfully disagree? Their ambassador growled. Your species has been in constant warfare for your entire recorded history. Your own data cores show conflicts spanning millennia. Sarah had prepared for this argument. Yes, we have had conflicts, but conflict drives innovation, adaptation, and growth. Every species in this chamber has a history of struggle. The difference is that we've learned to channel that energy constructively. Constructively, the question came from an unexpected source. Ambassador Theiss of the Serpentine Collective. The snake-like being rarely spoke in council sessions, preferring to observe and calculate. When they did speak, others listened. Explain this constructive channeling, human. Sarah felt a moment of uncertainty. The Serpentine were known for their intelligence and their ability to see through deception. But she pressed forward with honesty. We've turned our competitive nature into scientific advancement. Our aggressive exploration has led to the discovery of 3 new habitable worlds and 2 previously unknown jump routes that benefit all council species. Our military technology, developed through conflict, now protects shipping lanes from pirate incursions. High Chancellor Vextar's crystalline form shifted, creating new patterns of light. Yet your military capabilities far exceed what any species your age should possess. This raises questions about your intentions. Sarah felt something shift inside her. It was subtle at first, like a change in air pressure before a storm. Around her, she noticed her advisors straightening slightly, their eyes becoming more alert. It was happening to all of them, she realized. Some ancient part of their brains was recognizing a threat. Our military capabilities, she said, her voice taking on a harder edge, exist because we've had to fight for survival since we first stood upright on our homeworld. Every advancement, every technology, every strategy has been earned through necessity. The chamber fell quieter. Sarah continued, feeling momentum building. You speak of our aggression as if it's a flaw, but aggression is what drove us to leave our caves and build cities. It's what pushed us to cross oceans and eventually reach for the stars. It's what makes us effective against the very pirates and raiders that threaten this galaxy's peace. Ambassador Theiss slithered closer to the speaking platform. And what happens when humanity decides that the Council itself is a threat to your survival? The question hung in the air like a sword. Sarah felt that pressure in her mind increase, and suddenly she understood what was happening. Her species wasn't just being diplomatic here. They were being evaluated, tested, pushed to see how they would react. Every predator recognized the signs of being cornered. "We don't threaten those who don't threaten us," Sarah said quietly. "But we don't back down from those who do." A new voice cut through the tension. "The human military destroyed 3 raider fleets last month," said Ambassador Korth of the Trading Guild, a species that looked like upright dolphins with mechanical limbs. Fleets that had been terrorizing the Outer Rim for years. They did this without being asked, without expecting payment, and without claiming territory. The Bovac representative stamped again, but this time it seemed less certain. "This proves our point. They act unilaterally. They acted when everyone else failed to act," Korth countered. "The Council has debated the raider problem for decades. Humanity solved it in weeks." Sarah watched the dynamics in the chamber shift. Some species were beginning to look uncomfortable, while others seemed to be reassessing their positions. But there was something else happening too. Her human instincts were screaming that this wasn't just about expansion rights or military concerns. This was about fear. The established powers of the galaxy were afraid of what humanity represented. Not just their potential for violence, but their capacity to disrupt the careful, ancient hierarchies that governed galactic civilization. Chancellor Vextar's form pulsed brighter. "The vote will proceed as scheduled. All in favor of restricting human expansion?" As hands, claws, tentacles, and energy patterns rose throughout the chamber, Sarah felt something fundamental shift in her understanding of humanity's place in the galaxy. They weren't partners here. They were being systematically contained, and containment, as any student of human history knew, had never worked well on her species. Captain Marcus Rodriguez stared at the holographic display floating above his command chair, watching the voting tally from the Galactic Council session. The bridge of the U.S. Retribution fell silent as the final count appeared. 847 votes in favor of human expansion restrictions, 23 against, with 156 abstentions. "They really did it," whispered Lieutenant Commander Zhang from the navigation station. "They're trying to cage us in." Marcus had served in 3 different wars before humanity joined the galactic community. He'd seen politicians make decisions that got good soldiers killed, watched bureaucrats trade lives for convenience. But this felt different. This felt personal. "Sir," called out Ensign Reeves from communications, "we're receiving priority transmissions from the entire fleet. Captains are requesting immediate conference. Patch them through to Conference Room Alpha," Marcus ordered, rising from his chair. "Commander Zhang, you have the bridge." Within minutes, the conference room filled with the holographic projections of 37 ship captains, representing the bulk of humanity's deep space fleet. Marcus recognized most of them, veterans who had earned their commands through combat effectiveness rather than political connections. Captain Elena Vasquez of the UES Hammer spoke first. "Marcus, please tell me you have some kind of plan, because my crew is ready to turn around and show the Council what human aggression really looks like." Several other captains voiced agreement. Captain Singh of the UES Thunderbolt was more direct. "We have enough firepower right here to glass half the Council worlds. Maybe it's time they remembered why predators are feared." Marcus held up a hand. "Stand down, that kind of thinking. We're not pirates or raiders." "No," said Captain O'Brien of the UES Stormcrow. "But we're also not sheep. The Council just voted to treat us like a disease that needs to be quarantined." The room erupted in angry voices. Marcus listened to the frustration, the rage, the hurt pride of professional soldiers who had spent years protecting the very species now trying to restrict them. He felt it too, that deep primal anger that came from being cornered by those who should have been allies. "Quiet," Marcus's voice cut through the chatter like a blade. The room fell silent. "Now listen to me carefully. Every one of you took an oath when you accepted command. We serve humanity, not our own anger." Captain Vasquez leaned forward. "And how exactly does humanity benefit from being caged like zoo animals?" It was a fair question. Marcus had been asking himself the same thing. The restrictions weren't just insulting, they were strategically dangerous. Humanity needed room to expand, resources to develop, and the freedom to respond to threats. "Sir," interrupted Ensign Reeves's voice through the comm system, "Ambassador Chen is requesting immediate private communication with all fleet commanders." Marcus activated the connection. and Sarah Chen's image appeared in the center of the conference table. She looked tired but determined. "Captains," she began without preamble, "I need you to understand something. This vote wasn't about expansion rights. It was about fear. The council species are terrified of what we represent." "And what exactly do we represent?" asked Captain Singh. Sarah's expression hardened. "Change, evolution, the end of their carefully maintained status quo. For thousands of years, the galaxy has been ruled by the same ancient powers. They've created a system where conflict is managed through committee, where resources are allocated by bureaucracy, where problems are solved through endless debate." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "Then humans arrive. In 3 years, we've eliminated pirate threats that had existed for decades. We've discovered new worlds and trade routes. We've introduced technologies that make their ancient methods obsolete. And we've done it all without asking permission." Captain O'Brien leaned back in his chair. "So they want to clip our wings before we fly too high." "Exactly. But here's what they don't understand about humans. We don't respond well to cages." Marcus felt that familiar sensation again, the one from the council chamber. It was like a switch flipping in his mind, ancient instincts awakening. Around the table, he could see the same change happening in the other captains. Their postures straightened. Their eyes became more alert, more predatory. "What are you suggesting, Ambassador?" Marcus asked quietly. Sarah's smile was sharp. "I'm suggesting that humanity has always performed best when we're underestimated. Let them think they've contained us. Let them believe their vote means something. And then we show them what human ingenuity looks like when we're motivated." Captain Vasquez spoke up. "The fleet is ready for whatever you need, Ambassador. But I hope you understand. If they try to enforce these restrictions through military action, we will respond appropriately." Sarah nodded. "I'm counting on it. But first, we try something the Council has never seen before: coordinated human strategy." She transmitted a data packet to each ship. "These are your new orders. Officially, you're complying with Council restrictions by returning to human-controlled space. Unofficially, you're implementing Protocol Apex." Marcus opened the file and felt his eyebrows rise. Protocol Apex was a contingency plan developed by human military strategists months ago, based on the possibility that the galactic community might turn hostile. It was brilliant, ruthless, and completely legal under galactic law. "This is..." Captain Singh paused, studying his own copy. "This is going to terrify them." "Good," Sarah replied. "Fear makes people make mistakes, and the Council has already made their first one by underestimating us." Captain O'Brien was grinning now. "When do we start?" "Immediately. Remember, captains, we're not the aggressors here. We're simply responding to changed circumstances with appropriate adaptations, very human adaptations." As the conference ended and the captains signed off one by one, Marcus remained behind with Sarah's projection. "Ambassador," he said quietly, "are you sure about this path? Once we start down it, there's no going back." Sarah's expression was grave. "Marcus, my grandfather used to tell me stories about Earth's history, about what happened to indigenous peoples when colonizers decided they were threats to be contained, rather than people to be respected. The pattern is always the same: subjugation, exploitation, elimination." She paused, her eyes distant. "But this time the indigenous people have starships and weapons that can crack planets. This time the colonizers might have bitten off more than they can chew." Marcus nodded slowly. "Protocol Apex it is. How long do you think before they realize what we're doing?" "Knowing the Council? Weeks, maybe months. They're used to thinking in terms of centuries and committees. By the time they understand what's happening, it'll be too late to stop without a war they're not prepared to fight." After Sarah's connection closed, Marcus sat alone in the conference room, feeling the weight of what was about to unfold. Humanity had tried to play by the galaxy's rules, to be good citizens and cooperative members of the galactic community. But if the galaxy wanted to treat humans like predators, then perhaps it was time to remind them why predators were feared in the first place. Dr. Kenji Nakamura stood in the observation deck of Research Station Prometheus, watching the stars through the massive viewport. 6 weeks had passed since the Council vote, and the changes happening throughout human space were remarkable. Not just the military preparations everyone expected, but something deeper, more fundamental. "The psychological profiles are unprecedented," reported Dr. Lisa Morrison. his chief xenopsychologist as she approached with a data tablet. We're seeing activation patterns in human brain scans that haven't been recorded since the colonial wars on Earth. Kenji turned from the viewport. As head of the Human Behavioral Research Institute, he'd been tasked with understanding what was happening to his species. The initial reports from fleet commanders had been dismissed as military posturing, but the data was telling a different story. "Show me the latest readings," he said. Lisa activated a holographic display showing brain scan comparisons. These are baseline scans from human civilians taken 6 months ago, before the council restrictions were announced. The images showed normal patterns of neural activity. And these are scans taken last week from the same individuals. The difference was striking. Areas of the brain associated with threat assessment, strategic thinking, and social coordination were showing unprecedented activity levels. Most interesting was the heightened activity in regions linked to pack behavior and territorial instincts. "It's happening across all human populations," Lisa continued. "Not just military personnel, but civilians, scientists, even children. It's as if our entire species is responding to an existential threat." Kenji studied the data with fascination and growing concern. "Have you identified the trigger mechanism?" "That's the remarkable part. It appears to be primarily social and psychological rather than biological." The council vote was interpreted by the collective human psyche as a dominance challenge from other species. "Our brains are responding accordingly." A soft chime indicated an incoming priority transmission. The holographic image of Admiral Chen Wei, Sarah's older brother and commander of human deep space operations, appeared in the center of the room. "Dr. Nakamura," the admiral began without preamble, "I need your team's assessment of Protocol Apex implementation. We're seeing behavioral changes in our crews that Command needs to understand." Kenji gestured to Lisa, who transmitted their preliminary findings. "Admiral, what we're observing appears to be an evolutionary response to perceived species-level threat. Humans are naturally pack hunters who evolved under constant pressure. The Council's attempt to restrict us has activated dormant psychological patterns." Admiral Chen studied the data for several moments. "These enhanced cooperation and strategic thinking patterns, how long might they persist?" "Based on historical precedents, potentially for generations. Once a species-wide threat response is triggered, it tends to become culturally embedded. Our children will likely inherit these heightened instincts." "And the territorial aggression indicators?" Lisa stepped forward. "Admiral, humans are exhibiting classic predator pack behavior when faced with territorial restrictions. We're seeing increased resource acquisition, enhanced social bonding within human groups, and most significantly, coordinated strategic planning on an unprecedented scale." The admiral nodded grimly. "That correlates with what we're observing in the field. Human colonies are reporting volunteer enlistment rates up 300%. Civilian research teams are spontaneously developing weapons technologies. Even our children are playing war games with strategies that impress our military analysts." Kenji felt a chill. "Admiral, what exactly is Protocol Apex?" "It's what happens when you corner a species that evolved by hunting things larger and more dangerous than itself." The admiral's expression was hard. "Dr. Nakamura, I need you to prepare a presentation for the council. They need to understand what they've awakened." After the admiral signed off, Kenji and Lisa sat in silence for several minutes, absorbing the implications. "Kenji," Lisa said quietly, "I've been analyzing the social media chatter from human colonies. People aren't just angry about the restrictions. They're planning, coordinating. It's like watching a hive mind develop in real time." "Show me." The holographic display shifted to show communication patterns across human space. What Kenji saw made his breath catch. Lines of communication were flowing between colonies, ships, and stations in patterns that resembled neural networks. Humans were self-organizing into a species-wide strategic entity. "This is extraordinary," he breathed. "And terrifying. There's more. We're detecting similar communication patterns between human military units, research facilities, even merchant vessels. They're sharing information, resources, and tactical data without any central coordination. It's pure emergent behavior." Kenji walked back to the viewport, his mind racing. In the distance, he could see the lights of other human installations. Research stations, mining operations, defense platforms. All of them were connected now in ways that went beyond simple communication networks. "Lisa, run a predictive model. If these trends continue, what does human behavior look like in 6 months? She worked at her tablet for several minutes. When the results appeared, her face went pale. According to the model, if current psychological trends persist, humanity will have transformed into something resembling a single organism. Individual humans will still exist, but their decision-making, resource allocation, and strategic planning will be collectively coordinated. A hive mind? No, more like a wolf pack scaled up to species level. Individuals maintaining their personalities and autonomy, but all working toward common objectives with unprecedented coordination. Kenji felt that familiar sensation again, the one that seemed to be affecting all humans lately. A heightened awareness, a sense of connection to something larger than himself. He was part of humanity's response, whether he liked it or not. And what happens to species that try to control or contain an apex predator? Lisa's voice was barely a whisper. Historically, they become prey. A new communication alert chimed. This time it was Sarah Chen, transmitting from the council chambers. Dr. Nakamura, I need that behavioral analysis immediately. The council is growing concerned about human aggressive posturing, and some members are discussing military intervention to enforce the expansion restrictions. Kenji and Lisa exchanged glances. Military intervention against a species exhibiting apex predator pack behavior would not end well for anyone involved. Ambassador, we'll have a full report within the hour, but I need you to understand something. Humanity isn't choosing this response. It's an evolutionary adaptation triggered by perceived existential threat. The harder the council pushes, the stronger the response will become. Sarah's expression was grim. How strong? Kenji looked at the data one more time, thinking about wolf packs, human history, and what happened when predators were cornered. Strong enough to surprise everyone, including us. High Chancellor Vextar stood in his private chambers, his crystalline form dimmed with what humans might have called exhaustion. The reports flooding in from across the galaxy painted a picture that disturbed him more than any military threat he'd faced in his 3-century career. The humans are withdrawing, reported Intelligence Director Korth, a Zalari whose mantis-like form clicked nervously as she spoke. All their ships are returning to human-controlled space. All their trade missions are being recalled. They're complying with our restrictions completely. Then why? Vextar asked. Do I feel like we've made a terrible mistake? Ambassador Thys of the Serpentine Collective slithered into the chamber, her massive coiled form filling one corner of the room. Her presence here was unusual. The Serpentine rarely involved themselves directly in council politics. Because, Chancellor, Thys said in her sibilant voice, you have awakened something that should have been left sleeping. Korth's mandibles clicked rapidly. The humans are obeying our directives. What threat could they possibly pose from their own systems? Thys's eyes, each the size of a dinner plate, fixed on the Intelligence Director. Tell me, Korth, what do you know of human evolutionary history? They evolved from persistence hunters on a death world. We've all read the reports. And what happens when you corner a persistence hunter? Vextar's form flickered with uncertain light. Thys, speak plainly. What are you seeing that we're missing? The Serpentine's massive head swayed slowly. I have been monitoring human communications since the vote. Not their official diplomatic channels, but their civilian networks, their social gatherings, their private conversations. She activated a holographic display showing communication patterns across human space. Look at this data flow. Observe the coordination patterns. Notice how their information sharing has evolved in just 6 weeks. Vextar studied the display and felt something cold settle in his core. The communication patterns didn't look like normal civilian chatter. They looked like the neural networks of a single massive organism. They're planning something, Korth concluded. No, Thys corrected. They're becoming something, and what they're becoming should terrify every species in this galaxy. A priority communication alert interrupted them. Admiral Koth of the Council Defense Fleet appeared in holographic projection, his Bovac features showing strain. Chancellor, Koth began, we have a problem. 3 of our patrol fleets have gone missing in the neutral zone. Missing how? Vextar demanded. They simply vanished. No distress calls, no debris fields, no sensor readings. They were there on routine patrol, then they were gone. Korth's clicking intensified. Pirate raids? That's what we thought initially. But the Raider Coalition has been completely quiet since the humans destroyed their main fleets. And the disappearances are too clean, too coordinated. Thys spoke softly. How close were these patrols to human space? Admiral Koth consulted his data. The nearest was approximately 2 light-years from the human border. The room fell silent. 2 light-years was well within the neutral zone, but it was also close enough for human ships to reach quickly. Admiral, Vextar said carefully, are you suggesting the humans are responsible? I'm not suggesting anything, Chancellor. I'm stating that 3 Council fleets have vanished near human territory, and we have no other explanation. After Koth signed off, the 3 beings stood in uncomfortable silence. Finally, Koth spoke. We should increase patrols along the human border. Show them that Council authority extends throughout the galaxy. No, Thais said sharply. That would be exactly the wrong response. Vextar turned to her. Explain. Chancellor, my species has survived for millions of years by understanding predator behavior. We know when to strike, when to retreat, and when to simply avoid provoking something dangerous. She slithered closer to the holographic display. The humans are exhibiting classic apex predator behavior when their territory is threatened. They've withdrawn to consolidate their resources. They've increased coordination within their pack structure, and now they're testing our responses. Testing how? By eliminating isolated elements of our forces to gauge our capabilities and reactions. It's exactly what a pack of hunters would do when preparing for a larger confrontation. Korth's mandibles stopped clicking entirely. You think they're preparing for war? I think they're preparing to survive, Thais replied. And for humans, survival often means eliminating threats before those threats can eliminate them. Another communication alert brought Ambassador Chen's image into the chamber. The human looked calm, almost serene, which somehow made her more unsettling than any display of anger would have been. Chancellor Vextar, Sarah said politely, I'm calling to inform the Council of some developments in human space that may be of interest. What kind of developments? Vextar asked warily. We've completed our withdrawal from Council-designated restricted areas as requested. Additionally, we've begun implementing new security measures to protect human shipping from ongoing pirate threats. What security measures? Sarah's smile was pleasant and completely terrifying. Standard patrol protocols. We're ensuring the safety of all traffic in areas adjacent to human space. We've noticed some non-human vessels operating in these areas with unclear intentions, so we're taking preventive measures. The implication hit Vextar like a meteor impact. Ambassador, are you telling me that human forces are now patrolling the neutral zone? We're protecting our legitimate interests and ensuring the safety of interstellar commerce, as is our right under Galactic Navigation Treaty Article 15. Korth started to object, but Thys silenced her with a gesture. The Serpentine understood what the humans were doing, and her species' ancient wisdom counseled caution. Ambassador, Thys interjected, the Council appreciates humanity's commitment to commercial security. Perhaps we should schedule a meeting to discuss coordination of these security efforts? Sarah's expression didn't change, but something predatory flickered in her eyes. Of course, Ambassador Thys, though I should mention that our security protocols have evolved considerably since joining the Council. We've learned much about galactic threats during our brief membership. After Sarah's connection ended, the 3 Council members stood in heavy silence. Chancellor, Thys said finally, I recommend we reconsider the expansion restrictions. Absolutely not, Korth protested. If we back down now, we'll look weak. And if we don't back down, Thys replied, we may discover what human security protocols really mean. Vextar's form pulsed with uncertain light. For the first time in his long career, he wondered if the Council had finally encountered a species that couldn't be controlled through conventional galactic politics. The humans weren't playing by the rules anymore. They were making their own rules, and that terrified him more than any fleet of warships ever could. The Council War Room had never hosted such a gathering. Representatives from the galaxy's 7 most powerful military forces sat around the circular table, their forms casting strange shadows under the chamber's dim lighting. This was supposed to be impossible. These species rarely agreed on anything, let alone military action. The humans have crossed a line, declared General Vorth of the Hegemony Fleet, his massive Bovac frame radiating controlled aggression. In the past week, they've established security checkpoints along every major trade route in 3 sectors. They're not just controlling their territory anymore, they're controlling ours. Admiral Kextar of the Crystalline Defense Corps flickered with patterns of strategic analysis. Their positioning is flawless from a military perspective. They've created overlapping fields of control that would allow them to interdict any fleet movement in the Outer Rim. More concerning, added Fleet Commander Sith of the Serpentine Naval Forces, is how they accomplished this without anyone noticing until it was complete. Our intelligence networks detected no massive fleet movements, no resource mobilizations, no communication surges. Fleet Admiral Thyman of the United Worlds Navy leaned forward, his energy-based form pulsing with frustration. Because they didn't need massive movements. Every human civilian ship, every merchant vessel, every research station has been converted into part of their strategic network. They've militarized their entire species without technically violating a single arms limitation treaty. Chancellor Vextar entered the chamber, his crystalline form dimmed with exhaustion. The past weeks had aged him in ways that his species rarely experienced. Honorable commanders, he began, the Council has reached a decision. The human expansion restrictions will remain in place. Furthermore, their recent territorial claims will not be recognized. If they refuse to comply, we will enforce compliance through military action. The assembled military leaders exchanged glances. General Vorth spoke first. Chancellor, with respect, do we have any idea what we're actually facing? The humans have been members of the galactic community for only 3 years. Our intelligence on their true capabilities is limited. We know they're aggressive and technologically innovative, Vextar replied, but they're also vastly outnumbered. The combined fleets of the Council species outnumber human vessels by a factor of 50 to 1. Admiral Kextar's form flickered with uncertainty. Numbers may not matter if their tactical coordination is as advanced as reports suggest. And there are concerning gaps in our knowledge of human military doctrine. Fleet Commander Scythe slithered closer to the table. Chancellor, my species has been observing human behavior patterns since this crisis began. What we're seeing doesn't match any known military profile. They're not preparing for war in any conventional sense. What do you mean? Their fleet movements, resource allocations, and communication patterns suggest they're preparing for something else entirely. Something we don't have a tactical framework for understanding. Chancellor Vextar's form blazed with frustration. Commander, we need concrete assessments, not speculation. A priority communication alert interrupted them. The holographic image of Captain Elena Vasquez appeared in the center of the war room, representing the human fleet. Honored Council leaders, she said with perfect military courtesy, I'm Captain Vasquez of the UES Hammer. I've been authorized to deliver a message from the Human Collective Defense Network. The title sent chills through the assembled commanders. The humans weren't even pretending to operate as individual ships anymore. We're aware of your military preparations, Vasquez continued. We're also aware of the Council's decision to use force to maintain the expansion restrictions. Before you proceed, we'd like to offer a demonstration of current human defensive capabilities. General Vorth snorted. Is that supposed to be intimidating, Captain? Vasquez's expression didn't change. General, intimidation implies an attempt to influence behavior through fear. We're simply providing information to help you make informed decisions. She activated a holographic display showing star charts of the local sector. Attention, commanders, please observe your current fleet positions. The display lit up with hundreds of icons representing Council ships across multiple star systems. The assembled leaders realized with growing alarm that the humans somehow had real-time tracking data on every major fleet in Council space. How did you obtain this intelligence? Admiral Kextar demanded. Trade ships, research vessels, diplomatic couriers, merchant traffic. Vasquez replied matter-of-factly. Every human civilian vessel is now equipped with advanced sensor arrays and communication relays. We've had passive surveillance coverage of Council military movements for the past month. The implications hit the war room like a physical blow. The humans had created an intelligence network that spanned the entire galaxy, using civilian ships that no one considered threats. Fleet Admiral Thyman's energy form pulsed rapidly. Captain, are you telling us that humans have been conducting surveillance operations on Sovereign Council worlds? We've been monitoring public space traffic for navigation safety purposes, Vasquez replied with technical accuracy. All data was collected from public areas using passive sensors only. General Vorth stood abruptly. This conversation is over. Captain, your demonstration changes nothing. Council forces will move to enforce territorial restrictions within 48 hours. Vasquez nodded calmly. Understood, General. In that case, we'll implement Defensive Protocol Omega. The human captain paused as if listening to something the council members couldn't hear. When she continued, her tone carried a note of regret. Commanders, you should know that Protocol Omega represents human military doctrine when facing existential threats. My species has extensive experience with such situations. What does that mean? Chancellor Vextar demanded. It means, Chancellor, that humans have never surrendered. In our entire history, when faced with extinction, we've always chosen to take our enemies with us rather than submit. The war room fell silent. Vasquez continued speaking as if discussing weather reports. Every human ship, station, and colony is now configured for Protocol Omega. If Council forces attack any human target, all human assets will simultaneously implement total warfare protocols against all Council targets. Admiral Kextar's crystalline form flickered rapidly. You're talking about galactic war. No, Admiral. Galactic war implies two sides fighting for control. What I'm describing is more accurately termed mutually assured annihilation. If you attack us, we will ensure that the resulting conflict ends civilization as we know it. General Vorth's voice was strained. You're bluffing. No species would commit suicide rather than accept territorial restrictions. Captain Vasquez's expression became genuinely sad. General, you're thinking like a prey species. Prey animals surrender when cornered because survival is their primary instinct. Predators don't surrender. We fight until we win or until everything is dead. She paused, letting the words sink in. The choice is yours, commanders. Accept the new reality of human independence, or discover what happens when you corner a species that would rather burn the galaxy than submit to cages. After Vasquez's connection ended, the war room sat in stunned silence. Finally, Fleet Commander Scythe spoke. I believe them. We can't back down, General Vorth protested. It would set a precedent that any species can threaten the Council into submission. Admiral Kextar's form pulsed with deep thought. The precedent has already been set. The question is whether we want to survive to learn from it. Chancellor Vextar looked around the table at the most powerful military leaders in the galaxy and saw something he had never seen before in their forms and expressions. Fear. The humans had just announced their willingness to commit species suicide rather than accept subjugation, and everyone in the room believed they meant it. The Great Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. Every representative sat motionless as Chancellor Vextar's crystalline form cast prismatic patterns across the vast chamber. The vote he was about to call would determine whether galactic civilization continued to exist. The motion before us, he announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall, is the complete rescission of all restrictions placed upon human expansion, along with full recognition of human territorial claims and voting rights. A ripple of movement went through the chamber, but the silence held. In the past week, everyone had heard the reports from the military commanders. Everyone understood what rejection of this motion would mean. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat calmly in the human section, flanked by her small delegation. She looked remarkably peaceful for someone whose species had just threatened to end galactic civilization. Behind her sat Dr. Kenji Nakamura, whose behavioral studies had helped the Council understand what they were truly facing. Before we vote, Chancellor Vextar continued, I will allow final statements from interested parties. Ambassador Thys slithered to the speaking platform first. The ancient serpentine's massive form commanded respectful attention as she began. Fellow Council members, my species has survived for millions of years by recognizing when we face a superior predator. Today I say this clearly. Humanity represents an evolutionary leap beyond anything this galaxy has previously encountered. Murmurs rose from the assembled delegates. Thys continued. They have achieved something we thought impossible, individual intelligence enhanced by species-wide coordination. They have demonstrated the ability to transform their entire civilization into a military asset within months. Most significantly, they have shown us what true apex predator behavior looks like when territorial boundaries are challenged. She paused, her great eyes scanning the chamber. The choice is simple. We can accept their independence and learn to coexist with a superior species, or we can attempt to maintain our dominance and watch our civilization burn in the resulting conflict. As Thys returned to her position, General Vorth of the Hegemony Fleet approached the platform. His massive Bovac frame radiated the controlled aggression of a career soldier. Honored representatives, He began. I have spent my life defending the principles of galactic law and order. I have fought pirates, rebels, and hostile species across 3 sectors. But I have never faced an enemy that was willing to commit total species suicide, rather than accept defeat. His voice carried the weight of hard experience. Military analysis indicates that human forces could inflict catastrophic damage on our civilizations before being ultimately overwhelmed. The cost of victory would be the destruction of everything we've built over millennia. He stood straighter, his military bearing evident. Therefore, I recommend acceptance of human terms, not from cowardice but from strategic wisdom. Some battles cannot be won, only survived. Ambassador Korth of the Zelhari clicked to the platform next, her mantis-like form trembling with barely controlled emotion. This capitulation is unacceptable, she declared. We represent thousands of species and trillions of beings. We cannot allow ourselves to be dictated to by one aggressive species simply because they threaten violence. Clicks of agreement came from several delegations. Korth continued. If we surrender to human demands now, what happens when they make new demands? When they decide our territories would serve their expansion better? When they determine that non-human species are obstacles to their development? Her mandibles clacked with agitation. I say we call their bluff. No species will truly commit suicide over territorial disputes. They're counting on our fear to avoid a fight they cannot win. As Korth returned to her seat, Sarah Chen stood and walked calmly to the platform. The chamber fell completely silent as she reached the speaker's position. Honored delegates, she began, her voice clear and carrying. I want to address Ambassador Korth's concerns directly, because they reflect a fundamental misunderstanding of human nature. She activated a holographic display showing Earth's history. Humans have, throughout our history, repeatedly chosen death over subjugation. We have preferred mutual annihilation to surrender in conflicts spanning our entire recorded existence. This is not a bluff or a negotiating tactic. This is simply how we're made. The display shifted to show human military engagements across the species' history. When cornered, humans don't calculate odds or consider consequences in the way other species do. We activate survival instincts that prioritize taking our enemies with us over preserving our own lives. It's not rational by most species standards, but it's kept us alive on a planet that tried to kill us for millions of years. She paused, looking around the chamber. Ambassador Korth asks what will happen if you grant our demands. I can answer that. You'll discover that humans make excellent neighbors when we're not being threatened. Our 3 years in the Council prove this. We protected trade routes, defended against pirates, and contributed to galactic stability. Her expression became more serious. But she also asks what happens if we decide you're obstacles to our development. The answer is that you become our partners instead. Humans don't eliminate useful allies. We integrate them into our success. Sarah gestured to the assembled delegates. Every species in this chamber has abilities, knowledge, and perspectives that humanity values. Working with you makes us stronger. But the key word is with, not under. We will not accept subordination, but we eagerly embrace partnership. She looked directly at Chancellor Vextar. The choice is yours. You can have humanity as allies, working together to build something greater than any of us could achieve alone. Or you can have us as enemies, in which case everyone loses. As Sarah returned to her seat, Chancellor Vextar called for the vote. All in favor of accepting human demands? Hands, claws, tentacles, and energy patterns rose throughout the chamber. The count was overwhelming. 934 in favor, 89 opposed, with 23 abstentions. The motion passes, Vextar announced. All restrictions on human expansion are hereby rescinded. Human territorial claims are recognized. Voting rights will be adjusted to reflect human population and economic contribution. The chamber erupted in a mixture of relieved conversations and concerned discussions. Sarah Chen sat quietly, feeling the weight of what had just occurred. Humanity had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history: independence through the credible threat of mutual destruction. They had forced the galaxy's greatest powers to negotiate as equals rather than attempt domination. Ambassador Thys slithered over to the human delegation. Well played, Ambassador, she said quietly. Your species has just redefined galactic politics. Sarah nodded. We never wanted to be conquerors, thus we just wanted to be free. And now you are. The question is what humanity does with that freedom. Sarah smiled. feeling the collective determination of her species flowing through the neural networks that now connected all human settlements. We build something magnificent, and we make sure our neighbors benefit from its magnificence. As the council session ended and delegates filed out in their various forms and fashions, Sarah remained seated for a moment longer. Humanity had awakened its predator instincts and used them to claim its place among the stars. But predators, who hunted in packs, were strongest when they had territory to defend and allies to protect. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when apex predators decided to build rather than simply survive, and that, Sarah thought with satisfaction, would be the most human thing of all. The great assembly hall of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. Every representative sat motionless as Chancellor Vexitar's crystalline form cast prismatic patterns across the vast chamber. The vote he was about to call would determine whether galactic civilization continued to exist. The motion before us, he announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall, is the complete rescission of all restrictions placed upon human expansion, along with full recognition of human territorial claims and voting rights. A ripple of movement went through the chamber, but the silence held. In the past week, everyone had heard the reports from the military commanders. Everyone understood what rejection of this motion would mean. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat calmly in the human section, flanked by her small delegation. She looked remarkably peaceful for someone whose species had just threatened to end galactic civilization. Behind her sat Dr. Kenji Nakamura, whose behavioral studies had helped the council understand what they were truly facing. Before we vote, Chancellor Vexitar continued, I will allow final statements from interested parties. Ambassador Thes slithered to the speaking platform first. The ancient serpentine's massive form commanded respectful attention as she began. Fellow council members, my species has survived for millions of years by recognizing when we face a superior predator. Today, I say this clearly. Humanity represents an evolutionary leap beyond anything this galaxy has previously encountered. Murmurs rose from the assembled delegates. Thais continued, they have achieved something we thought impossible. Individual intelligence enhanced by species-wide coordination. They have demonstrated the ability to transform their entire civilization into a military asset within months. Most significantly, they have shown us what true apex predator behavior looks like when territorial boundaries are challenged. She paused, her great eyes scanning the chamber. The choice is simple. We can accept their independence and learn to coexist with a superior species. Or we can attempt to maintain our dominance and watch our civilization burn in the resulting conflict. As Thys returned to her position, General Vorth of the Hegemony Fleet approached the platform. His massive Bovac frame radiated the controlled aggression of a career soldier. Honored representatives, he began, I have spent my life defending the principles of galactic law and order. I have fought pirates, rebels, and hostile species across 3 sectors. But I have never faced an enemy that was willing to commit total species suicide, rather than accept defeat, his voice carried the weight of hard experience. Military analysis indicates that human forces could inflict catastrophic damage on our civilizations before being ultimately overwhelmed. The cost of victory would be the destruction of everything we've built over millennia. He stood straighter, his military bearing evident. Therefore, I recommend acceptance of human terms, not from cowardice but from strategic wisdom. Some battles cannot be won, only survived. Ambassador Korth of the Zelhari clicked to the platform next, her mantis-like form trembling with barely controlled emotion. This capitulation is unacceptable, she declared. We represent thousands of species and trillions of beings. We cannot allow ourselves to be dictated to by one aggressive species, simply because they threaten violence. Clicks of agreement came from several delegations. Korth continued, if we surrender to human demands now, what happens when they make new demands? When they decide our territories would serve their expansion better? When they determine that non-human species are obstacles to their development? Her mandibles clacked with agitation. I say we call their bluff. No species will truly commit suicide over territorial disputes. They're counting on our fear to avoid a fight they cannot win. As Korth returned to her seat, Sarah Chen stood and walked calmly to the platform. The chamber fell completely silent as she reached the speaker's position. Honored delegates, she began, her voice clear and carrying. I want to address Ambassador Korth's concerns directly, because they reflect a fundamental misunderstanding of human nature. She activated a holographic display showing Earth's history. Humans have, throughout our history, repeatedly chosen death over subjugation. We have preferred mutual annihilation to surrender in conflicts spanning our entire recorded existence. This is not a bluff or a negotiating tactic. This is simply how we're made. The display shifted to show human military engagements across the species' history. When cornered, humans don't calculate odds or consider consequences in the way other species do. We activate survival instincts that prioritize taking our enemies with us over preserving our own lives. It's not rational by most species standards, but it's kept us alive on a planet that tried to kill us for millions of years. She paused, looking around the chamber. Ambassador Korth asks what will happen if you grant our demands. I can answer that. You'll discover that humans make excellent neighbors when we're not being threatened. Our 3 years in the Council prove this. We protected trade routes, defended against pirates, and contributed to galactic stability. Her expression became more serious. But she also asks what happens if we decide you're obstacles to our development. The answer is that you become our partners instead. Humans don't eliminate useful allies. We integrate them into our success. Sarah gestured to the assembled delegates. Every species in this chamber has abilities, knowledge, and perspectives that humanity values. Working with you makes us stronger. But the key word is with, not under. We will not accept subordination, but we eagerly embrace partnership. She looked directly at Chancellor Vextar. The choice is yours. You can have humanity as allies, working together to build something greater than any of us could achieve alone, or you can have us as enemies, in which case everyone loses. As Sarah returned to her seat, Chancellor Vextar called for the vote. All in favor of accepting human demands? Hands, claws, tentacles, and energy patterns rose throughout the chamber. The count was overwhelming. 934 in favor, 89 opposed, with 23 abstentions. The motion passes, Vextar announced. All restrictions on human expansion are hereby rescinded. Human territorial claims are recognized. Voting rights will be adjusted to reflect human population and economic contribution. The chamber erupted in a mixture of relieved conversations and concerned discussions. Sarah Chen sat quietly, feeling the weight of what had just occurred. Humanity had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history: independence through the credible threat of mutual destruction. They had forced the galaxy's greatest powers to negotiate as equals rather than attempt domination. Ambassador Theiss slithered over to the human delegation. "Well played, Ambassador," she said quietly. "Your species has just redefined galactic politics." Sarah nodded. "We never wanted to be conquerors, Theiss. We just wanted to be free. And now you are. The question is what humanity does with that freedom." Sarah smiled, feeling the collective determination of her species flowing through the neural networks that now connected all human settlements. "We build something magnificent, and we make sure our neighbors benefit from its magnificence." As the council session ended and delegates filed out in their various forms and fashions, Sarah remained seated for a moment longer. Humanity had awakened its predator instincts and used them to claim its place among the stars. But predators, who hunted in packs, were strongest when they had territory to defend and allies to protect. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when apex predators decided to build rather than simply survive, and that, Sarah thought with satisfaction, would be the most human thing of all.